And we're going to start on page 43. And here comes Camila. I have a feeling they're going to just kind of trickle in today. That's all right. Page 43 is where we're at. Okay. And you do need a post-it today if you still don't know how to identify those adverb clauses. That's why I made this. Some students in my other class are new to this. You guys might already know these words, but if you have a post-it nearby, I recommend marking this page, adverb clause, and then the actual clause itself, or the word, the www.asia. You guys remember that from last year, right? Give me a thumbs up if you remember www.asia. Okay, good. I say last year, but really you guys have had it for like probably 3 years now. So if you're good and you don't need to mark this page, I'm okay with that. Um, the adverb clause, and I'm just going to review this and then we'll put this on there, is a group of words. I know you guys are probably finishing up breakfast and that's okay. So when you're ready, go ahead and turn your cameras back on and stuff. There's a group of words that begins a www word with a www word and contains a subject and a verb. Just a quick reminder, phrases like prepositional phrases, they don't have verbs, but the clauses do. So all of them do. The who, which clause, that clause, because clause, adverb clause, main clause. There's a whole bunch of them. And they all have verbs inside the clause. So that's something to remember. The phrases do not, though. Okay, that's the difference. Um, it says an adverb clause is a dependent clause, which means it must be added to a sentence that is already complete. So it's basically adding information to it. And here they are. When, while, where, as, since, if, although, because. I remember doing that with you guys a bunch. So you should have that memorized and it should be back into your brain now because you've had a little time off and now we're back to it. And here's your example. Because Robin was now an outlaw, he had to hide where the sheriff could not find him. That word because is the B in dot B here. That signals that it's an adverb clause. Now, here's something to remember too. If it said because of, that would be a prepositional phrase, or I should say a preposition at the beginning of a prepositional phrase. So that's something to remember. You have, I believe you have on your checklist the because clause now. Don't put of next to it if it's clause. Okay, because of is a prepositional phrase, part of a prepositional phrase. Okay, so anyway, because is here. This is AC for adverb clause, and check it out. It does have a subject verb pair. Robin was. That's inside the clause. And then we have where. That's one of the W's here. And then we have a subject verb pair here. Sheriff could, and then find. Sometimes there's more than one in a sentence. Did you notice right here that's not part of the adverb clause? It says he had to hide. That's technically a main clause. That's the main point of the sentence. This is adding information to a sentence that's already complete because we have the subject he and we had. That's the verb to hide. Remember, whenever we have to in front of a verb, it's called an infinitive. So it's not functioning as a verb anymore. It's had is the verb here. Just a quick refresher on some of those things. I'm going to move this up here. Okay. And the comma rules. Two rules here with the adverb clause. If the adverb clause comes first and then the main clause, you need a comma in between. Just like this part right here, because Robin was now an outlaw, comma, here's the main clause, he had to hide. Do not use a comma before an adverb clause. So if the main clause comes first and then the adverb clause, no comma there. And that's the example for the second half of the sentence because this clause comes after the main clause and there's no comma there. Okay, so AC, comma MC or MCAC. And then down here is talking about the word as. You'll know that as is one of the www.asia words right here is as, A-S. And as is on the prepositions list. It's the first word in a prepositional phrase. So it's one of those words you're going to have to watch out for to see, is it going to be an adverb clause or is it a prepositional phrase? Either one, but it can't function as both in the same sentence. Okay, so you have to just look at what's around it. If you see a verb near it, it's probably a clause. If you don't see a verb near it, it's a prepositional phrase. So here's your two examples as a prepositional phrase right here. As an outlaw, Robin hid from the sheriff. Notice as an outlaw does not have a verb. The verb is way over here. Okay, it's not near as. Here, as he hid in the forest, that is an adverb clause because we have the verb hid right near it. Okay. As he hid in the forest, Robin collected a band of loyal men. Any questions about this page? If not, just shake your head no for me so I know you don't have any questions. Okay. And Camila, when you're ready, I need to see you. Still eating. You can wait till you're done eating. It's okay. All right. How about William? Can you read the sentence for us today, please?
For an entire year, Robin sheltered in Sherwood Forest while he met other outlaws and gained valuable hunting skills.
Good. Nice reading. So sheltered has a ed. That's signifying it is probably a verb, which it is. And if I take off the ed, I see shelter. So as a verb, it would be to find shelter. If he's sheltered, that means he's hiding somewhere in a safe place or he's trying to find somewhere to hide, right? He's sheltered. So check vocabulary. That will be a verb in this sentence. And then there's only one article. You can find that one by yourself. All right. And now we've got 5 nouns. How about Harmony? Can you find those 5 nouns for us?
Yeah.
Good. Good.
Forest. Outlaws. One more. Scales.
Skills. Good. And actually, forest, did you say Sherwood Forest?
They're not.
Oh, okay. So Sherwood is that name of the forest. So actually, we're going to put a little bracket like that. You're right, though. Forest is a noun, but so is Sherwood because it's the name. So Sherwood Forest, we're going to put a bracket like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, you got it. Good job, Harmony. How about the pronoun, Camila? Where's the pronoun in here?
He.
Good. Since that was so short, Camila, how about you do the adjectives too? So these are going to tell about the nouns. So this is for Camila. Like if you look at skills, what kind of skills are they?
Hunting.
Good. Hunting is one. There's also one before that too.
Valuable.
Yes, both of those are telling about the skills.
Entire and other.
Good, you got it. Okay. How about the coordinating conjunction, William?
And
And good. Since that was so short, I'm going to have you do the adverb clause too, okay? That's for William. Do you see the adverb clause, the WWW clause? I saw you unmute and then you muted again. I need you guys to turn your cameras on. It's okay if you're eating. I need to see you. I can't tell what's going on here. How about Harmony, since I see you? It seems like they're having trouble this morning. Can you tell me where the adverb clause is?
Where does it start? Starts on,
While.
okay.
Good.
Where does it end?
Scales.
No.
Good. You're right. All the way to the end because there's outlaws and gain. It's telling the whole adverb clause with and. Good job. So AC there. And then William, are you there? Okay, unmute and turn your cameras on, please. And same for you, Camila. William, I need you to tell me where the subject verb pairs are.
Um,
Thank you.
uh, uh, Robin,
Robin's a subject. Good. And then what did he do?
sheltered,
Good. And then how about inside the clause?
he and met,
He and met. There's another verb in there.
gained,
There you go. Good. Thank you. And then Camila, what about the prepositional phrases?
For an entire year
Good. And
in Sherwood Forest.
good. Nice. And what kind of an opener do we have, Harmony?
Two. Prepositional.
Very good. Two prepositional. Nice. We've got 4 capitals. You guys can do that part by yourself. And don't forget Sherwood Forest and Robin. Now we have a comma rule. William, we just talked about this. It has to do with the, actually, no, it doesn't on this one. But what is the
take the
comma
comma
rule?
out.
Yeah. Take this one out right here because it's just listing 2 things that he did. He met and gained. So no comma for that. Very good. And then end mark is a period. All right, we survived. Phew. We got this, you guys. We got this. Okay. Let's put away grammar. Nice job. And Camila, I know you came in a little bit late, but did you have a chance to watch the video from last week yet or not yet? Not yet. Okay. So it is up to your mom. If she wants you to rewatch or to watch that and catch up on the lesson, then you need to do it. Okay. So check with your mom on that. We're going to move on from that today. Okay. And we're going to go on to the next lesson. By the way, the video that I posted is from my in-person class. Excuse me. So it's going to look a little different than our Zoom call. But that's okay because it's the same lesson. It's the same class that I'm teaching in person. So it just looks a little bit different. Anyway, but that's from last week. This week, we're going to move on. We're not even going to really share stories this week because some of you didn't get to it, and that's okay. So let's just jump in and go to page 72 in your books. And we're going to go on to the next event that happens in history. Remember last week, if you did the lesson, it was about the Boston Tea Party. That came right after the Boston Massacre. Remember talking about that when the guy was standing guard, and they were throwing rocks and snow and clubs, and they got into a big fight and people died, and that kind of led into more issues because the Englishmen, the people from Great Britain were the king, I should say, King George was charging all kinds of taxes, like all kinds of taxes, and they were trying to make back the money that was spent on the French and Indian War that happened. And so anyway, there was a big issue with the tea that was on the ship, and you'll have to read that story to catch yourself up to what's going on. But basically, the point to remember is that things are escalating. It means that the tension was getting worse, and the frustration and anger and just rage was building. And now we've hit a point. This lesson is going to talk about something called the shot heard round the world. We're coming up on the 250th anniversary, 250-year anniversary of this event. So it's pretty interesting, but it was the beginning of the Revolutionary War. This is the first, leading up to the first major war that our country was involved in. So we're going to read this historical information here, and then I'm going to show you a little video, because to me, the videos help me understand and visualize what's going on here. So on page 72, right here where it says historical information, the story for this lesson is based on the events that led to the beginning of the Revolutionary War. The poet Ralph Waldo Emerson used the phrase, "the shot heard round the world," in 1837 to describe the first known offensive shot Americans fired at the King's soldiers. It happened on the North Bridge of Concord. The poem is called Concord Hymn, and it begins like this. Okay, so a hymn is like a song, and it's also a poem, and this is what he wrote. By the rude bridge that anchored the flood, sorry, let me try that again. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled. Here once the embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard round the world. Okay, so it says round the world, but it basically means around, right? It's just a poetic way of saying it. But I want you guys to know that it's not literal. Okay, so if you've ever heard a gunshot before, you can hear it within a certain radius of, feet or maybe yards, but not around the whole world. Like if there's a gun fired somewhere in California, they're not going to hear it in China. Okay, so it's not literal, but it is what signified and what triggered. Just realized that was a pun right there, but basically triggered the start of a war, the huge Revolutionary War. So, and that happened, it involved other countries around the world. So that's where that saying comes from. Okay, it's a saying basically. All right, so let me play this video for you, and then we're going to go into the actual article and read about that. So let me pull this up here.
Today we're looking at the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bell Ringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. So, on the night of April 18th, 1775, British troops stationed in Boston began a nighttime march towards Concord, Massachusetts, located about 18 miles west. Their mission was to capture a stockpile of weapons that they suspected were being kept there by the Sons of Liberty and Patriot supporters. As they began their march, riders such as Paul Revere and William Dawes rode out ahead of them, warning the Massachusetts militia, otherwise known as the Minutemen because they could be ready to fight at a minute's notice, that the British were coming or the British were on their way. At Lexington, Massachusetts, about 11 miles west of Boston, 77 militiamen began to gather to stop the 700 approaching British. Remember, militia is basically citizen soldiers who serve in an emergency. These were farmers and craftsmen who came out with their hunting guns to fight. This was not a professionally trained army like the British troops that were approaching. The militia in Lexington began to assemble at 1 a.m. on the morning of April 19th, 1775 at Lexington Common or Lexington Green, which was kind of the open area in the middle of Lexington. They waited and waited, but saw no British troops approaching. Many of them decided to go and wait inside a nearby tavern until they heard something. At 4:30 a.m., they heard the sound of approaching drums, and they rushed out to form up to repel the approaching British troops. Two columns of militia lined up, facing hundreds of British. The British commander ordered that the militiamen lay down their guns and disperse. Just then, a single shot was fired. To this day, no one knows for sure who fired first, but that shot has come to be known as the shot heard around the world, because not only did it ignite the American Revolution, but following the American Revolution, several other revolutions would break out across the world. Once that shot was fired, the British began firing volleys into the militiamen's lines, while the militiamen tried to fire back. When the smoke cleared, 8 militiamen were dead, 9 were wounded, and only 1 British soldier was wounded. The militiamen ran and the British resumed their march, but now the British and American colonists had officially traded gunfire, so the American Revolution had officially begun. As they continued their march to Concord, the British ransacked homes along the way, looking for any sign of weapons or resistance. At about 7 a.m., the British arrived in Concord only to find a few cannons, but the bulk of the weapons had been moved by the militia before the British arrived. The British searched the town for several hours and set fire to many of the structures in town. Little did they know, though, that while they were searching for weapons, that hundreds upon hundreds of Massachusetts militiamen had descended upon Concord. By 9:30 a.m., the British start to come under fire at a bridge north of Concord, and by noon, the British begin to retreat, as now the 700 British troops sent to capture the weapons are facing a force of over 2,000 militia, with more arriving every minute. The retreat back to Boston for the British turned into an all-out sprint, as the British were coming under fire the entire 18 miles back to Boston. Many British troops dropped their guns and equipment so that they could run faster to get back to Boston. Despite the fact that British reinforcements were sent out from Boston to protect the retreat, the British were still just too overwhelmed. By the day's end, nearly 3,500 militiamen had arrived to push back the British. Of the 700 British troops that marched to Concord, 250 redcoats were killed or wounded, compared to 90 killed or wounded for the Americans. The militia now began to close in on Boston and surrounded the city with the British trapped inside. The siege of Boston would last for almost another year and would include the Battle of Bunker Hill, which occurred in June of 1775. After years of disagreement and protest, the British and the Americans had finally openly engaged in battle. Although there would still be some efforts to keep peace, the differences between the two sides would lead to the Americans declaring independence and a full-scale war that would last for the next 8 years. So with that, hopefully you learned something.
All right. Okay. So, yeah, this was an important part of our history because it really was the beginning of getting our independence, which we celebrate on the 4th of July, right? And that happened in 1776. So it's interesting how we in the history books, they use some words that mean the same group of people. Like sometimes you hear him saying the word Minutemen, sometimes you hear him saying militia, sometimes he's saying Americans, sometimes patriots. Those are all part of our American soldiers, okay? And the redcoats, that was the British side. They were the ones that were trying to overcome and take over the land. And they were the redcoats, and sometimes they were called the British military. So just so you're clear on the wording on that, but it's interesting how America, our soldiers were not as trained and professional as the British soldiers were. They had uniforms, they had been trained, they all carried the same kind of gun, they knew how to battle, but the Americans knew how to hunt. And they had their own guns, but there were no uniforms or anything. But they were called Minutemen because they were ready within minutes. So as soon as Paul Revere came through and said, "They're coming, they're coming, they're coming," the Minutemen were ready. They had their supplies, they got out the door, and then it was almost like another style of ambush where they came right behind the British in Concord when the British were burning down things and stuff. Thousands of them came and pushed them out. So that's kind of how this all escalated, and it just keeps escalating from here. So let's look at the actual article today. By the way, do you guys have any questions for me right now before we move on to this article? You've probably heard of the shot heard around the world before and things like the Revolutionary War. Because in school, you know, these events are told in the history books again and again, because the more you hear it, the more you remember it. So this is a rendition of the event, which means this is from someone's perspective on what happened that day. And you're going to have a chance to do a story sequence chart this week from a different perspective. So this is going to be our practice for like creative writing on this, even though it's a real event and real things happened. The characters here are not necessarily real. They were somebody's interpretation of what could have happened. Okay, so I'll explain that more as we go, but it's called The Shot Heard Round the World. So we have a character named John, and this is a made up character. So when you rewrite this, you can make up your character too. Okay, the actual facts of the event need to stay the same, but your character can change. John was a farmer who lived in Massachusetts in 1775. And by the way, like I said earlier, it was 1776 when we became a nation. So we're getting close now to that point where America is formed, okay? He lived with his wife Sarah and their two small sons near Lexington. King George had sent soldiers into the American towns. The colonists resented this. Remember, the colonists are the ones that are here in America. So they were the militia, they were the patriots, lots of different names they use for the people who are here in America or were here in America. They resented this, so conflicts began often erupted. One day, John returned home quite upset. Those blasted redcoats are everywhere. Adams and Hancock are right. We need to store up arms to protect ourselves, he told Sarah. Sarah is also a made-up character. And they're pretending like these two characters are living in that time and are part of the colonists at the time. And do you guys know what arms means right here? Store up arms. Do you guys, anybody know what arms means? It's okay. It's not arms like on our body. So what is it, William? What does arms mean here?
Like guns?
Guns, yes. And you maybe you've heard the term firearms before. Same thing, guns. Yes, good. John soon joined the Minutemen who were gathering and storing arms in case war broke out. They were hiding the arms in Concord. Then late one April night, there was a loud voice outside John's door. He leaned out the window and saw Paul Revere. Hurry, John, he said. The regulars are coming out. Okay, there's another term. The regulars are the redcoats or the British. army, okay? The regulars. John knew that meant that the redcoats were headed for Concord. He woke Sarah and told her, I must go to Lexington. We must stop the redcoats from reaching our arms. Because they knew if the redcoats made it and found all the military, like all the weapons, then there's no way the Americans would win the battle, right? They would have no weapons to fight back on. If you're dealing with guns, there's nothing that can match gunpowder other than another gun, right? So they needed to protect their weapons. When John reached Lexington Green, there were about 70 other Minutemen ready to face the Redcoats. They waited anxiously. Then, early in the morning, about 700 British troops arrived. Okay, so there were about 70 Americans and 700 British troops. So, big difference in number. Do not fire unless fired upon, Captain John Parker ordered the Minutemen. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here. Disperse, ye rebels, the British officer ordered. The Minutemen did not budge. John's heart was pounding. He prayed that the soldiers would turn back, but all of a sudden a shot rang out. Then another and another. When the shooting stopped, 8 Minutemen were dead, and the Redcoats were marching to Concord. There, on the North Bridge, were Minutemen. More Minutemen were ready to fight. They opened fire and eventually drove the British back to Boston. The Revolutionary War had begun. Okay. So, like I said, this is a perspective from John and Sarah. These are made up characters, but the events that happened were real. So, go to page 75. This is talking about a story variation, meaning you can kind of make up part of this, okay? So it basically says the source text is a historical fiction, which means it's based on real event in history. You may add descriptive details to your story as long as you do not change the basic historical facts, just like I said. When you write this story, you may change the characters and some of the details. The main character does not have to be John. As you complete the first portion of the story sequence chart, one of the questions you will answer is who is in the story. Instead of answering John, change the character. You may change some of the details as well. Here are some ideas. Okay, so these are ideas for you. You can use one of these ideas or come up with your own idea. You can make your main character the daughter of a Minuteman. What is she like? What is she doing as her father is storing arms? She might follow her father to Lexington. What would she see when the shot was fired? Would she see who fired the first shot? Would she know any of those who were killed? What would she do after the shooting ends? You could make your main character the son of a Minuteman who wants to go to Lexington with his father. How old is he? Does he go? Will his father be shot? You could make your main character an animal who witnesses the events. That might be fun too. Like if it's in the trees, like a squirrel or a bird or some animal that sees the event. It could be Minuteman's horse, the family pet, or a forest animal. All right, so start thinking about what perspective you want to write your story from and what their names are and some details about them. So, who is the main character in your version? Does anybody know what they want to do yet for that? Who your main character is? They're still thinking. You can write down some ideas. You don't have to share, but if you want it, maybe the dog, maybe a bird, or it could be a friend of the family or the daughter. What is the character like? Where is he or she when the shot is fired? So it looks like some of you are still thinking about this. I don't want to pressure you to decide right now. You don't have to decide right now, but use this page to take down some notes when you start thinking about it for your homework, like which perspective you want to write it from. As you complete your KWO, have fun developing your variation of this historical event. The only required details are the historical facts. So these are required. I'm looking at the bottom here. The storing of arms in Concord, the Minutemen going to Lexington and Concord to protect those stores, and the battles that occur in both places. The characters and their thoughts, feelings, and actions may be determined by you. All right, any questions about that? No? Okay. So this is a style of creative writing, even though we are talking about a historical event here. All right, so we're going to move on to this story sequence chart. Remember these from last year. Some of you didn't get a chance to do the homework last week. I think you did a story sequence chart for that one too. Yeah, you did. Last year, I'll just give you a little recap on this. Last year. I just check something really quick here. Oh yeah, you did it for the Boston Massacre too. But remember, the story sequence chart has a sequence to it. We start with the characters and setting, then we move into the conflict and the problem, and then the climax and the resolution. And it's really nice and handy that they have these questions listed here for you. So you can use those as you're filling in the details. All right, let's just get started on it. You guys will have to work on this for your homework, but the first question in this box here about character and setting is, when does the story happen? So, William, look at the beginning of the story here. When does this story happen? When and where does it happen?
1775 and in Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts, yes. So 1775, and it is Boston. We can just put Massachusetts because it does happen in a couple different cities there. Massachusetts, that's a big word. Okay, good. And then, Harmony, have you thought about who your main character is going to be? Did you make up a character yet, or are you still thinking about that? You know who you're going to use as your main character? It's okay if you haven't decided yet.
Who are you gonna do? The
Daughter.
Okay. The daughter, do you have a name you want to use for the daughter?
what do you think her name would be?
May.
Meg or May?
May.
May. Oh, okay.
And
Cute. So for you, and I'm going to draw a line here. So you guys be thinking about a name for your character. I'm going to use Harmony's example. She said May, and it's the daughter. And then let's put that word, you can either decide she's the daughter of a farmer or a Minuteman. What do you think, Harmony? Do you want her to be the daughter of a farmer or a Minuteman?
farmer.
A farmer. Okay. Basically, they're the same person because the farmers were the Minutemen too. Okay. And who remembers what Minutemen means? Do you remember what that means? The Minuteman or Minutemen? Well, I hear the word minute and I hear the word man. Okay. So you can decide by that they were the men, the adult males who were ready for battle, and they could be ready within minutes. That's what they said in the video. So, like, ready to go. Like, their bags are packed, their stuff is ready. All they have to do is grab it and go. They were just almost like being on call, if you've ever heard that term before. Like if a police officer or a firefighter, they're basically, as soon as they get a call for especially firefighters, there's a fire, they drop what they're doing and they get in the engine and they take off toward the fire to help put it out. It's like that, okay? Um, and what did it say in this is for Camila. Um, what was the feeling like during that time in that first paragraph? You know, it says that John returned home and then he starts saying things. What is he feeling? What is he thinking at the time as far as John?
Upset.
Upset. Yeah, that's Harmony. And then Camila, yes, he was upset. And Camila, what did he say?
He said something like those blasted Minutemen. Regulars.
Yes, regulars, which is the redcoats, right? They're everywhere, right? So for you, Harmony, it could be her dad is upset or the daughter's upset. You're gonna have to figure out how you're gonna incorporate that. But I'm gonna put upset and then redcoats and then everywhere. All right, and then William. In the story, John, what did he do next after he was saying he told Sarah, we need to store up arms to protect ourselves? What did he do next? The second paragraph.
He joined for gathering or lookout.
Yeah, your microphone is not coming in. Can you say it one more time? I think you said he joined.
He joined the Minutemen who are gathering and storing arms and
Yes. Yes, good. So he joined Minutemen. Whoops. And I'm going to put arms, but basically they were gathering arms, they were gathering everybody's guns, and they were storing them. Because the other thing that happened was the redcoats were searching through people's homes and they were looking for those arms. And they planned ahead. They got rid of all the arms and put them in a place to store them. They planned ahead, so that was a good thing. All right, and then from there, they stored the ammo or arms in Concord, right? Remember, they went to Concord, which was in a different area than Boston. On that road, there was a road to it. So we could put stored, and you can use arms again, or maybe I'll say weapons. Concord. I'm just giving you some ideas. If you guys have other ideas, that's okay. So we've got your location is in Massachusetts. You got your year. You've got one character here, whoever your character is, whatever perspective it is here, and a little bit about what's going on there. And then let's move down here. We have 5. If you need 5, you can use it. It's optional. You can see that. I think you have topic clincher on this. Let me double check because I think you guys started using that. Oh, no, not yet. Just kidding. Topic clincher is coming, but it's not there yet. The problem starts coming in here, and it says, what does the main character need or want? What does the main characters do, say, feel, think, and feel? What happens before the climax? So at this point, who was it? Who remembers? Who was it that rode their horse through that area in Lexington saying, the redcoats are coming or the regulars are coming. It's a famous person in history.
Paul Revere.
Yes, very good. You got it. Paul Revere. Let's put his name here. We know that name. Since that's his name, we're going to count that as one. And he actually says regulars are coming. You could use redcoats. Some history books say the British are coming. The British are coming. The British are coming. So whatever it was, same group of people. He's warning them, right? One thing I want you to know about that particular moment in time, Paul Revere did not yell it. A lot of interpretations are that he's running through the towns yelling, "The British are coming, the British are coming." But actually, it was more secretive than that. Because if he's yelling it, then the word would get out, right? And maybe even the redcoats would hear him. So it was more like he was going to different neighborhoods and saying, "Wake up, men, the British are coming, get ready, let's go." You know, it was more like that feel to it. But I think the artistic way of saying it is that he ran through yelling it. And then that was the point where John was telling Sarah that he's going to go to Lexington to stop them, to stop the redcoats, right? So it could be May's dad or whoever your character is. If it's the dog, he sees that his owner is saying, "I got to go to Lexington." So whoever it is, they are going to Lexington to stop redcoats. All right. And they made it to Lexington. When they got there, there were 70 Minutemen waiting there. And then who remembers how many British were there? There were 70 Minutemen, but how many redcoats were there that showed up? You guys remember the number? There were 70 Minutemen. It's kind of in the middle of your article.
700.
Yes, good. Thank you, Harmony. 700. 700 British or redcoats. So notice I'm using different words like regulars, redcoats, and British. Those are all the same people. So if you want to keep it the same word, you can. If you want to change it up, I'm okay with that too. And they arrived, right? Because remember, the Minutemen went ahead of them and then they were waiting there. And then here come the British. They were playing their drums. They were all marching in the same step and they had their fancy uniforms on, their fancy guns, and they're marching together all nice and tidy. And the Minutemen were just kind of standing there with their guns waiting. They weren't sure what was going to happen. And then Captain Parker, remember that name? Captain John Parker. Camila, what did he order the Minutemen? What did he say to the Minutemen, Captain John Parker? It's important.
Do not fire unless fired upon.
Yes, very good. That's important to remember because the Americans did not want to start it. And so they didn't want to be the first ones to fire the shot. Now, the guy in the video, and this is what they say, nobody really knows who shot the first shot. And maybe it's because it was foggy. Maybe they couldn't really see. They weren't really sure. It could have been somebody random that was passing by that fired the first shot. We don't know. Nobody ever really knew who that was. So I'm going to put Captain John, I'm putting Cap. John Parker said, "Don't fire unless fired upon." So I'm going to put fire and circle it. and then put upon. So I can remember what he said. I'm going to put quotes around that. And then the British yelled back, "Get out of here." Basically, he said, disperse, meaning get out of here, right? I'm going to put the British, I'm going to put BRIT for the British. Get out. Like leave. You need to leave. And this gets us to the climax of the story. Okay, so the conflict is we've got two groups of people and somebody's going to start the fight. And we don't know who's going to start the fight yet. We still don't know, but that's the problem, right? That's the conflict that's happening. We've got the Minutemen and we've got the British or the Redcoats, and they're at a standoff. They're looking at each other. They're at a standoff. And then that's right where we get into the climax of the story. And suddenly there was a shot. But it was called a standstill at first, right? Standstill. And then suddenly, it's a good LY word, a shot. Now you guys can copy mine or you can write your own if you have a different way of putting all this, okay? After that one shot, that's the shot heard around the world. There were more shots after that. I'm just going to put more shots here. All right. And then from there, and another, when the shooting stopped, 8 Minutemen were dead and the Redcoats were marching to Concord. So it didn't tell the second half of the story, which we know from the video. But so at that moment in time, the Redcoats defeated American soldiers at that time. At the very end here, this is where you're going to bring it into, it was the beginning of the Revolutionary War. I'm going to let you guys fill in the rest of this for part of your homework. I lost track of time a little bit. So let's look at your checklist on page 79 really quick. So you guys are going to finish this third paragraph. Don't forget to mention it's the beginning, that was the beginning of the Revolutionary War. Okay, that's the whole point of this part of history is what went into the Revolutionary War. Looking at the checklist on 79, the top is pretty normal, what we've been seeing, and we do have a new dress up for you on here, the because clause. Remember, when you use because, do not use of with it, because this is a clause, don't use of. So you're going to tell why something is the way it is. Okay, maybe the Minutemen were called Minutemen because they were ready to fight within minutes or something like that. You're explaining why something is the way it is. The strong verb, that's just an action word. So don't use words like go or went. Those are not considered strong verbs. So you would use traveled or marched or journeyed or ran, something, an action word that they did. The who, which clause and the ly adverb. So you need one of each of these in each paragraph. Here are the banned words go, went, and say, said. So don't use those. Use something else other than those. And then our vocabulary words. A lot of people had trouble printing these, so that's all right. We're going to go to page 322. This is lesson 8. So jump back here to the back of your book on 322. Here they are for lesson 8. Persevere, compel, destined, appalled. Those are your 4 vocabulary words. So persevere, to endure despite difficulty. So that might be a good word to use, like for the daughter, May, she persevered and stayed with her father, or she stayed with the mom, or watched from a tree, or something like that, where she persevered, she endured despite difficulty, but she didn't give up. And that was the Minutemen too. They didn't give up, even though they were outnumbered. Compel, to force, drive, or urge. So these Minutemen were compelled to stand their ground for battle, right? Because they wanted to protect their land. So they were compelled. That's a verb, okay? Compelled, you could put ed on that. Destined, another verb. It's determined ahead of time. So they were destined, like the war was destined to happen, right? It was just destined to happen because the anger and the tensions were high. Appalled means filled with horror or dismay. So they were appalled at what was happening. They were filled with horror. All of these are actually verbs this time around. So these are some great strong verbs. You're going to pick 2 of them and use them somewhere in your paper. And make sure to label it VOC before the word when you use these words, okay? All right, any questions about what you guys are going to work on this week? Check with your mom about last week's lesson. See if she wants you to do it. I want you to do it if she does, so she's in charge, okay? And then you're going to finish that story sequence chart, write 3 paragraphs. Don't forget about your checklist. You can change it up a little bit with those ideas about characters and situations and things like that, but keep the historical facts the same. All right, you guys. Good job today. Have a good week. See you next
Bye.
week. Bye, Harmony. Bye, Camila.